Welcome back, everyone. This is a tribute from Hollywood, and today we're taking a moment to pay tribute to the American icons we've recently lost, as well as other beloved figures whose lives touched people far beyond any border. If this video means something to you, a like goes a long way. It helps us keep producing these remembrances with the dignity they deserve. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. There's no easy way to say goodbye to someone like Joy Harmon. She was 85, and she passed away in Los Angeles, a city she'd called home long after the cameras stopped rolling. The world she once moved through was a different kind of Hollywood. Warm, a little reckless, unfiltered in ways you rarely see anymore. If you were alive and going to the movies in the mid-60s, chances are you know her face without knowing her name. She didn't build a sprawling filmography. She didn't need to. One moment did it all. Cool Hand Luke, 1967. That car wash scene. Playful, fearless, electric. It burned itself into the culture and never left. Entire careers couldn't do what that 2-minute scene managed. But Joy's story doesn't follow the predictable arc. She made a choice most people in her position never do. She walked away. Quietly, without apology, she traded the studio lights for a bakery. Early mornings. Flour on her hands. The rhythm of an oven instead of a director's cue. To some that might seem like a step back. To anyone who knew her, it was something more like freedom. Those who were close to her remember a woman who was warm without being showy, grounded without being rigid. She had a son. She had a life. One that most of the world never got to see, and that was entirely by design. Memory is a peculiar thing. One moment, a single expression caught on film, and somehow it outlasts everything else. You think you've let it go, and then it surfaces again, clear as the day you first saw it. This one carries real weight. John Hammond Jr. is gone at 83. Not the legendary record executive, his son. The one who picked up a guitar instead of a contract, who spent his life chasing something unpolished and true at the heart of American music. Word came out of New Jersey, not far from where much of his quieter chapter played out. If you were drawn to music in the late 60s and early 70s, you may remember him less through radio play and more through feeling. He wasn't interested in the hit-making machinery. He went the other direction entirely: acoustic blues, slide guitar, sounds that seemed to carry the weight of generations before him. His father had already left an enormous mark, working alongside names like Bob Dylan and Aretha Franklin. But John Jr. didn't coast on that inheritance. If anything, he carved out a path that ran perpendicular to all of it. Small venues. Consistent recordings. Music that demanded you lean in to hear it. He stayed in that lane for decades. There was Southern Fried in '69, and much later, in 2003, a Grammy for Wicked Grin, recognition that came not with fanfare but with the quiet satisfaction of work done right for the right reasons. People who spent time with him described someone focused, steady, a little immovable, but not in a negative way. He had found what he believed in and he stayed there. And now that voice is part of the past. That's the thing about blues musicians. They have a way of lingering. A certain lick, a certain tone, and for a moment, there they are again. Long before the arenas, long before the talkbox became synonymous with his name, Peter Frampton was simply a child listening. He came into the world on April 22, 1950, in Beckenham, England, a modest place, unhurried. His father was an art teacher, someone who paid close attention to things, who noticed what others passed over. That same quality took root in Peter early. Music arrived without ceremony. He was 7 years old when he picked up a banjo. No grand revelation, no sudden calling, just a small instrument and a growing curiosity. He didn't perform. He absorbed. That distinction mattered enormously in who he became. By the time his teenage years arrived, the guitar wasn't something he played, it was something he needed. Not for fame, not yet, but because it was the closest thing he had to a private language. He practiced like someone trying to find a home in sound, not someone chasing technique for its own sake. At 16, the world shifted fast. He joined the herd in 1966 and overnight became something he hadn't asked to be, a teen idol. They called him the face of '68. The label sounded like a compliment. It mostly wasn't. Underneath it, he was still that attentive boy wondering why people were watching him rather than listening to what he was playing. He left the herd in 1968, not out of rebellion, but out of instinct. He needed something with more honesty in it. Humble Pie, formed in 1969 with Steve Marriott, gave him that for a while. Rougher edges, fewer pretensions, music that lived closer to the bone. But even that wasn't where he was ultimately headed. By the early 70s, he stepped out solo. No guaranteed audience waiting. The early albums were solid without being explosive, and it seemed possible, briefly, that the gamble might not pay off. Then came 1976. Frampton Comes Alive. The record didn't just sell, it became part of people's lives. Show Me the Way. Baby, I Love Your Way. Do You Feel Like We Do? These weren't performances. They felt like conversations. The talk box gave the guitar something like a voice, and suddenly the instrument was saying things people hadn't heard before. Over 8 million copies sold in the US alone. He was everywhere, but this time, people were genuinely listening. Then the turn. His 1978 album couldn't match what came before it. The film Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band landed badly and the criticism followed quickly. For a period, the noise around his name changed. But he never put the guitar down. He just kept working, touring, showing up, not for the spotlight, but because the music was still there asking things of him. In 2006, Fingerprints arrived. No spectacle. No nostalgia tour. Just precise, personal instrumental music from someone who had earned the right to make exactly what he wanted. A Grammy followed in 2007. Not loud recognition, but lasting. In 2019, he shared publicly that he had inclusion body myositis, a progressive muscle disorder with no clean resolution. He didn't hide from it. He spoke about it openly, almost calmly, as if he had already done the harder internal work of accepting what it meant. He announced a farewell tour, and yet, when he walked out on those stages, it didn't feel like an ending. His hands still moving across the strings. His face still holding that same focused, searching look. Still chasing the sound that had pulled him forward his entire life. He continues today. Slower in some ways, but present. Still connected to something that never fully let go of him. For anyone who came of age with his music, there's something steadying in that. Not everything disappears. Some things simply grow quieter, and stay. It doesn't sit right, saying it out loud. Willie Colón has passed away at 75. For so many people, he wasn't just a musician. He was a feeling, the pulse of a summer block party, the sound of the South Bronx when it was both broken and magnificent, the voice of a community that refused to be invisible. The news came out of New York. Of course it did. That's where it all started. A kid from the South Bronx in the late 60s with a trombone in his hands, stepping into a music scene that was loud and complicated and completely alive. Salsa, in those years, was more than a genre. It was identity, a declaration. And Willie was at the center of it. Those early recordings with Hector Lavoe weren't slick. Albums like El Malo in 1967 sounded like the city itself, raw, restless, real. He could have settled comfortably into that lane for decades. He didn't. He kept moving. Singing. Producing. Writing music that carried real weight, stories about struggle and pride and survival, the kind of stories that didn't get told anywhere else. Then came the collaboration with Ruben Blades. Siembra, 1978. That record crossed every geographic boundary salsa had ever known. Suddenly the music was no longer regional. It belonged to the world. And still, he was more than the music. He spoke up about the things that mattered to him. He got involved. He tried to return something to the neighborhoods and the people who had built him into who he was. People who knew him described someone intense, purposeful, a man who didn't spend much time on the comfortable choice when a harder, more meaningful one was available. That trombone is quiet now. But those opening bars, sharp, brash, unmistakable, they don't just disappear from memory. Willie Colón is the kind of artist who stays with you long after the music stops. Not in the back of your mind. Right at the front of it, where it counts.